Yeah, right. So,
So basically, like today, as we are going to talk about something that has come in the past decade, which is fast fashion.
right,
And surprisingly, not a lot of people know about these terms like fast fashion and slow fashion. Fashion is also something that is known as sustainable fashion these days, because fashion and textile industry has such a great impact on the environment and even on the social setting,
right,
that I believe that this must be a frequently spoken, like frequently talked about topic, you know. And there is no hard and fast definition about what fast fashion is, because basically it is a concept that has
right,
emerged, like I said.
right,
And the concept has to basically do with cheap clothes, cheap production. Everything is inexpensive, and there is something known as the lead time,
right,
in fast fashion.
correct,
And the lead time is basically the time of when the designer is designing something,
right,
and till the time it reaches the racks
right,
of your favorite showroom or something.
correct,
So that is called the lead time. And that's where the term fast fashion even comes from, because this particular process is fast. They
correct,
want to get clothes out at such a high rate
right,
and in such a huge quantity that um, it definitely beats the time of like how one would think of, okay, well, if one has to produce a set of clothes, you have to like think about the designing,
right,
then you have to like think about all the other aspects, the fabric that you're going to use.
correct,
Fast fashion eliminates all of that, because what fast fashion is doing is it's ripping off the ideas and the designs and creativity from the already existing brands or
correct,
designers or like fashion that is out there. So
absolutely,
why is it a big deal? Like people ask, if even if people want something that is affordable, why is it such a big deal?
right,
Well, the big deal is because people don't know that it is responsible for 10% of carbon emissions globally. That is the textile industry today. And this statistic is basically uh, you know, uh, it was presented, like it was surveyed by the UN Environmental Program,
right,
and that's what they found, that the carbon footprint is so high that it practically beats any other industry that you can think of. In
correct,
fact, it is so high that all the international flights combined with maritime shipping combined, it's the carbon emission is even higher when
that
it comes to textiles,
that is absolutely
which
true.
is,
So you think
yeah, it
that you're going for something, you're making the processes really inexpensive, you're providing affordable to an extent, affordable clothes to the masses, but no one realizes that even though the process is inexpensive, everything is so quick, as you mentioned, the lead time, among other things, but the entire effect that it's having is on our environment, right? As you mentioned, when
absolutely.
it comes to the carbon footprint, that statistic in itself is mind-boggling to think that at any given point in time, all of the flights around the world, all of these expansive and huge shipping containers, shipping vessels, all of them combined aren't able to create that much of carbon footprint versus one industry is is it's very disturbing to put it.
Yeah, it's bizarre, like when you just think of it. And that is why it is so important. Even, in fact, it is said that it takes 2,000 gallons of water to produce a pair of jeans. That's denim. And even the denim industry has taken such a fast pace since like the early 2000s, when denim actually came into the market, it came into the trend. Everybody wanted a denim.
Right,
Even today, I feel like denim is something like everybody owns, but they don't realize that the cost of producing that one pair of denim is actually so environment, like it's damaging, that it's something that people cannot purchase over and over again.
Right.
And denim, of course, like considering how much of an environmental impact it is having, it's not costly. You have affordable denim as well. You have certain man-made fabrics these days, and like denim is certainly one of them. Denim is not a crop, it is not a plant, it is man-made. Like it
Correct.
is a synthetic material,
Right.
and hence it is creating much more damage to the environment. And it's not just the environment that we are going to speak about, we are also going to speak about the social impacts that mainly involves labor.
Correct.
And I am talking about exploitation and abuse of people from developing countries.
Correct.
And the thing is that, when you wear these clothes, you never really take a look at where this was actually manufactured.
Right.
The manufacturing label clearly says maybe it's made in China, or it's made in India, or it's made in like Cambodia, like Sri Lanka somewhere, or it is made in Bangladesh. People usually ignore it. Like people will look at the brand.
Right.
This is like the brand, and this is what we are wearing. And that's the thing, right? Most of these fast fashion brands are so easily accessible these days. Like the biggest example for fast fashion today is Zara. And Zara is practically the franchisee of Zara exists in almost every corner of Mumbai or any metropolitan that you look at. You always have a Zara store in a mall. And Forever 21 is also a fast fashion brand. H&M is a fast fashion brand. What these companies are basically doing is that they are producing clothes so quickly, and in turn it is affecting the environment to such a great extent that is immeasurable.
Of course.
Secondly, the labor that is involved. When you look at clothes that cheap, when you are like getting a t-shirt that is maybe like 300, 400 rupees, or like people are putting it up on sale for like 70% off, 50% off, flat 50% off, you're not realizing that the cost that is involved in producing that piece of clothing is actually so low that even if they are selling it at flat 75% off, they're still making a profit out of it. Exactly. And that is a huge violation of labor laws, not just in India, but globally. It
Correct.
has become a global issue today. And with e-commerce emerging in, like e-commerce at this moment is estimated to be like, I think around $20 billion or something at this point of time. And it is growing. It's fastly growing. And now with the pandemic, everybody has switched to e-commerce. Even retailers have now switched to e-commerce. Everybody wants to have a website that you can easily access and you can purchase something.
Absolutely.
But what we don't see is like what we find very fascinating about e-commerce here again is that e-commerce does not really have a criteria of any kind.
Yes,
It doesn't have a quality standard. Basically, I can become a retailer and I can sell my clothes on Amazon. It does not require me to have a certain quality standard in order to sell my products to people.
correct.
So I could be using fabrics that are extremely synthetic to people. And with that, I mean something like polyester
Right.
is extremely damaging to the environment,
Correct.
because polyester is basically plastic. That is what it is. It's neither cotton, it's neither silk or anything that India is currently the leading exporter in. Like India is a leading exporter of cotton today, and there is so much of water being used in the cotton fields as well. That is not organically grown again. But then again, there are so many man-made materials that you will come across. The biggest one being polyester.
Correct.
Every clothing has some level of polyester in it. That's because polyester is really, really cheap. But what people don't realize about something like polyester is that when this piece of clothing is reaching the rivers or the lakes or wherever it is getting dumped in the landfills, it is non-biodegradable.
Correct. Correct.
In
Absolutely.
fact, it's taking like hundreds of years for it to come to a point where it does not particularly harm the marine life or
Right.
the environment or the aquatic life. So it is having a lot of impact, is what it is.
True.
And even like basically even a cotton t-shirt, a simple cotton t-shirt that you're wearing, a cotton that is not ethically produced, which is not organic cotton, it's taking about 700 gallons of water to produce. And these statistics are actually crazy, but the thing is, like, nobody bothers looking it up because people are like, oh well, you're getting access to it for a cheaper rate.
Cheaper rate.
And the same thing happens, now when you look at you look at the fashion industry in general. People have now started speaking about and taking initiatives that support sustainable fashion and slow fashion, and are basically making people aware of what fast fashion is. So you have certain designers here in India that are producing clothes made of authentic naturally grown materials, like naturally organically grown cotton or
Correct.
silk or something for that matter. And of course they are paying their workers adequately.
Correct.
And but then again, the biggest challenge that these designers also face these days is that they could produce something and they could have it on the racks,
Right.
okay, and it would retail for like thousands of rupees. It's
Correct.
obviously catered to a certain income group. Like, not everybody can afford designer clothes that are sustainable. And then what happens is, like, one of these brands, let's just say Zara, looks at the design, produces something exactly the same for the fraction of a cost,
Correct. Which
and puts it on their
called out
racks.
for, which they've been called out for time and time and time again, but it's something that's so imbibed in their culture now that it's quick money, it's easy money, and you can just quickly get everything rolling onto the shelves, and that's it. So there's absolutely no regard for there's been no regard for the environment, of course. There's been no regard for labor, correct? Because it's always been, okay, we'll look at those things later. They don't concern us. It's our business to get this out, to sell it. Labor, we don't care
Mhm.
about it. It's cheap labor. The cheaper labor it is, the better it is for us. But even when it comes to just blatantly copying designs, even that is something that they've stopped caring about. It just doesn't matter because they're like, it's cyclic. We're getting
Yeah.
fired from something, we're picking something up, but it's here just for those 3 months, right? After that, it's not going to be restocked on our shelves. We're just going to get it done with. So that
Hmm.
so is again something that we're only contributing to, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
But
seeing a lot of litigation against any of these fast fashion companies, anything with concrete in the sense that has been initiated or any concrete decisions that have been taken, even when it comes
hmm,
to legislation, when it just comes to taking them to court, not just in India. In India, so we're very far behind when it comes to suing brands like that. But even in the developing countries, there's not been much action. There are a lot of groups raising a lot of pertinent points. But why do you think that is?
see, here's the thing that when designers create something, it's, again, first of all, let's just say you're not a very renowned designer for that matter. You're a small designer, and you have your design copyrighted, or you have it registered under the Designs Act,
Correct.
which is an alternative for the Copyright Act. Basically, there are two ways where you can gain intellectual property rights over the designs that you create. But this is just limited to the design, and it must be original. So let's just say you manage to get through that process, and now you have an intellectual property right over this design that you have created, and it is completely original. And the next day you find out that maybe like a fast fashion brand has ripped off,
Correct.
and it has already at this point sold so many pieces to so many consumers that consumers end up thinking you are the one who actually ripped it off a fast fashion brand.
Right.
That is when people think, what now? Although we have this particular thing registered
Right.
under the Designs Act or the Copyright Act, what they can do is they can either go all in and sue the particular company,
Correct.
or they could just move on with it. And the sad reality here is that people actually choose to move on, because fighting litigation is actually very, very expensive and time consuming. And
Absolutely.
when you look at corporate giants and these big brands, like even big fast fashion brands, they always have like a team of really good lawyers that they can afford for years, right?
Correct.
So the process of justice as it is does not strike as an option to them at that given stage. And of course, there are designers that are renowned. They can afford litigation. They can afford to go to the court and sue a big corporate giant or a big company for that matter. But here, what they think of is like what is in store.
Correct.
If let's just say, taking an instance of the Design Act that was passed in the year 2000. So under the Design Act, you can get your designs protected for 10 years, for a period of 10 years. And if in that period of 10 years somebody manages to plagiarize your design, or somebody manages to copy the exact same design as
Right.
you, the same color, the same pattern, or whatever, then the thing is that they are entitled to a sum of rupees 50,000. That is how much you are getting
Correct. That
from
is
yeah. And this is like, it's a part of the act, right? It's not that something that designers even get to choose. Like
correct.
there are collateral damages again, because it has hurt their reputation, it has damaged their reputation and their business going forward. But all of that to be taken into consideration takes a very long time, and all of that is basically not even included. So what they are getting out of this is they are getting damages that are not exceeding rupees 50,000
And
as per
they're
the act.
probably paying someone more than that just to register a
Just to
complaint or to
create
draw a
something new.
complaint or do something. Or no, even when it comes to the paperwork to sue a giant corporation, they'd have to invest a lot more, many
Absolutely,
times over
absolutely.
what 50,000 gets to them. So that again is slightly ridiculous because it needs a lot of overhaul.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that brands don't go in for litigation, and there aren't judgments in favor where they have compensated more than just 50,000, and they've paid the royalties that or the sales that they've made out of those particular brands. Yes, but it's a very difficult thing to even prove,
Correct.
considering the definitions that are in the Copyright Act or in the Designs Act, whatever the designer favors. Now, here's the thing that initially these designers were not really very proactive in terms of getting their designs copyrighted, or their logos trademarked and stuff like that. So they were not really you know aware or like cognizant of intellectual property and how much it could benefit them. So even now the confusion exists among so many. Some
Hmm.
people just create designs and they put it out because they don't really look into the other aspect of like having somebody having to rip it off in a
Correct.
second before they know it,
Right.
right? And even then, today there has been like a huge dilemma that if I create a design today, am I supposed to now take a right under the Designs Act 2000, uh, or am I supposed to go for the Copyright Act?
Okay,
Right. So there is a demarcation with the definitions
hmm.
that the Designs Act of 2000 is particularly catered to a design.
Correct.
The term design itself has been defined under Section 2D
Right.
in the definitions clause.
It's not correct.
But the Copyright Act is not giving a definition for designs.
True.
It is giving a definition for artistic work or craftsmanship. So again, there is a demarcation, but it doesn't mean that clothes are not copyrighted. The designs are not copyrighted,
Correct.
I mean. So people usually go in for the copyright because copyright gives you protection for 50 years. Yeah. If if you are not copywriting more than 50 designs.
Correct.
That is.
Correct.
So if there are designs less than 50, then you're getting the protection for 50 years. If they are more than 50, then, there is some
Yeah.
adjustment here and there that has been made or whatever. But the Designs Act is then giving you protection for 10 years. And again, when somebody is violating it, like I said, the damages are not exceeding rupees 50,000. That is what is happening here. And people have spoken up, and even these days, because of social media, it has become easier for people to express you know um, and maybe even speak about experiences that they have had as designers, where these brands have ripped their designs off.
Right.
But legally speaking, there is not much they want to get involved in anymore.
Correct.
They want to spread awareness about the intellectual property rights that are available for them to claim damages. But
Correct.
the thing is, mainly people are just not proactive. They're like, okay, I guess I will just like move on and maybe be a little more careful the next time around.
True. True. We chalk
So
it up to a
this
learning
is again,
experience, right?
sorry.
We just tend to chalk it up to a learning experience and then get on with it, because we know the added cost of getting into litigation, expenses, time wise, all of that. It's harrowing, right? So we chalk
Yeah,
it to a learning experience and we move on. That's true. So back
absolutely.
to the topic then, but um, fast fashion is so everyday now, right? It's just so everyday. You open your
Hmm.
wardrobe, you're going to get one, two, five, maybe more than that examples of fast
More.
fashion, right? All of us
Yeah.
are invested in it, correct? Now, another thing is, as you rightly mentioned, sustainable fashion, right? It's on the expensive side. It caters to a class of people who can afford it, correct? So what else do you think can be done to make it more affordable? We have come across different things. There are more and more people right now who are conscious of the fact that there is a huge environmental aspect associated with the industry, right?
Hmm.
Ethical aspect associated. So a lot of them are now becoming okay with the idea of purchasing second-hand clothes. There is an existent market that deals in, thrift markets. They sell second-hand clothes. There's an entire market online and offline that lets you rent clothes as well for certain,
Absolutely.
right? So you're not spending that much just to wear a dress or a blazer or something once, twice, thrice. If you just rent it out and
Hmm.
get it done and over with. So all of that is happening, but those are very tiny, tiny steps, right? And of course, again, not accessible to all, right? So, do you think there is a sort of a middle ground that can be achieved with regards to making sustainable fashion slightly more affordable, so that if I am today to spend, say, 500 to 600 rupees on a t-shirt, I wouldn't mind
Yeah.
spending 750 to 800 on a similar t-shirt that's being provided to me by a sustainable brand, right? But if the asking price for that same kind of material or t-shirt is 1200 or 1400 or 1500, of course it's going to pinch my pocket. Correct. So do you think
Exactly.
something can be done with regards to incentivizing such manufacturers, players, small-time industries which do churn out sustainable fashion, so that that entire gap can be bridged between, you know, sort of just
The
pushing
consumer
the
and
consumer
the
to
people that are the designer,
correct,
basically.
correct,
And yeah, see, this is the problem again, and it's more of a systematic issue as well, that there are so many layers between the design first getting made and then it reaching to the consumer,
right,
that there are so many allocation of costs that these brands, they make their best effort to reduce those costs to the bare minimum. In fact, like the laborers that are working in these industries, they are not even paid.
correct,
So like I think again, like you mentioned, thrift shops and shops for second hand clothing are a very very good option. I in my personal opinion, these might be things that you do on a personal level, but they have a great impact,
correct,
because what you're doing is you're discouraging the consumption and the sales that are generated by these fast fashion brands. and these big corporate entities. And so I guess, yeah, like you can always switch for tailored clothes. Maybe you can directly have somebody make your clothes for you,
Correct.
and you can pay them adequately. That
Correct.
can also be a given option. But to like completely eliminate those layers and destroy the business model that now they have been using for the past few decades has nearly become impossible,
True.
right? And
Yep.
achieving a middle ground has also become difficult, because the way this market functions is that if there is a demand in the market, there is a supply. And there is a reason why those people are still supplying clothes, because people are consuming them.
Correct.
The
Absolutely.
I'm not going to lie, those really cheap prices are attractive to look into it, although those clothes are not durable.
Correct.
And people now have this certain stigma that okay, maybe they cannot repeat outfits for that matter, and they want maybe a new outfit for every time they are going out to a special occasion. What happens is that many of these clothes just end up in landfills.
Correct.
And like I said, when they are non biodegradable, what's happening to the system is that these clothes are accumulating. They are then dumped into the rivers and the lakes. And it's obviously harming the aquatic life. So it's all a chain, like it's all a cycle, all the way from labor exploitation to then the end result of it, just all these chemicals and the dyeing processes and everything. These chemicals are just being dumped into the fresh water.
Correct. Correct.
And what even when you, like I said, when they are manufacturing these particular clothes, they require huge quantities of water, immeasurable quantities of water. Again, one thing that people don't know is that something as like I said, polyester is something which is non biodegradable, but then polyester is also contributing to something known as these microfibers that get released from you know uh, these materials. And those microfibers also end up in the water. And yeah, so this is something that is happening, and fashion industry is currently um, one of the largest contributors. In fact, 20% of the water pollution right now, it is because of fast fashion.
Correct. True.
Yeah. And that's exactly what is happening. And for the production of these fibers, basically a lot of fresh water is extracted, right? So it's creating a huge issue for people. And then the other aspect that you cannot ignore, like I said, is the labor cost that is involved into all of these. Like the thing is, you will never see your clothes made in France or something, or made in like the fashion capitals of the world, because they are, but the thing is that they're going to cost you a lot more.
True.
And like we've already established that this is not affordable by most people. So what is happening here is that these people are actually facing inhumane conditions of work.
True.
It's basically slavery at this point of time. It's bonded labor. And in fact, there was a report by the International Labour Organization back in 2015.
Correct.
They
Correct.
had come to India
Correct.
to
Yes.
visit India and see what are the conditions of yeah
I've
uh,
actually even
people in the textile.
yeah, I've been through this report as well. The sample size through which they conducted their survey also mentioned that quite a lot of them haven't even entered into contracts with the
Absolutely.
manufacturers whom they work for. They're getting paid somewhere around less than 1 rupee per garment, right? And there is absolutely there's no concept of safeguards for them at all, at all. So it's
Absolutely. So when they were conducting this survey, they basically asked them if you have any issue or any problem at your workplace, who do you approach and who do you go to in order to resolve it? And they said, oh, either we go to our human resources department, or we complain to our supervisor. But the thing here is that they don't really do anything about it
Correct.
because they know that the conditions are so bad at the moment that there is nothing that they can do to change it.
Correct.
Even those people, I mean, according to the laborers, those people are in power, but they actually don't really have a power. They are just meant to overlook and supervise and see if those laborers are getting those units produced a day,
Correct.
a particular day, right? So there is a requirement. And the thing here is that when such organizations come in for inspections, like the International Labor Organization itself, it's such a huge, huge organization at a global level. These people are well aware
Of course.
of their arrival and their presence.
They are already they're expecting it, and they know they've got to put their best foot forward. So
Absolutely.
it's
So when they are reaching their destination, by that time, the child labor, it's absolutely gone.
correct.
The conditions are made more humane. You know, these laborers are even instructed to not give out a lot of information because they threaten them that you will lose your job or we'll fire you if you like speak up against whatever problems that you've been facing, or they give them false assurances that what, we will fix it, but you don't have to go and tell them, because they will then end up exploiting you, or they will end up taking some action against you. So
Correct.
illiteracy even in this sector has become such a major issue. Like you said, contracts are something that are extremely futile when it comes to this, because they do not understand those contracts, and people, like those companies, of course they take undue advantage of that particular factor. Even designers take advantage of that factor, and they include terms in contracts, or they use languages that local laborers and workers working do not comprehend at all.
True. True.
And most of these laborers even get in through an agency, and the agency makes them sign contracts.
Correct.
And then there is basically no scope of protection. And not just laborers, even influencers and models working in the fashion textile industry have also been victims of this, these dirty tactics
Correct.
and politics that the companies and the corporate giants play, these
Correct.
designer houses play. And they get people into contracts that they don't perfectly understand. And as lawyers, we understand the value of contracts and the clauses that they have.
Correct.
But when contracts are made for them, they are usually very unilateral,
Right.
or
Correct.
they are very like substandard contracts with a bunch of clauses that have been used for decades now. There has been absolutely no change, nothing in terms of the tenure, nothing in terms of the working hours, the minimum wage. In fact, there's no concept of minimum
It's
wage here
become
in India.
right.
And I told you, like even like professionals like us end up getting exploited because of the same reason, because there is no concept of minimum like working hours and minimum wage per
Correct.
hour that we are contributing to the work. So you can imagine the predicament that those laborers are in. So when ILO had reached at that given point of time, although the sample size was small, I think it was conducted somewhere in Bangalore, they
Right.
said one thing that they correctly mentioned though was that the textile industry was dominated by women,
Right.
and there weren't a lot of men. I think in the northern side, relatively, there were a lot of men, but in the south side, they found more women workers. But here, they made a very interesting observation. I feel like it was almost blindsided, because they said that there was no child labor involved.
Yeah, I read that,
Only,
and it really stood out to me because I was like, no, this goes against everything that I've heard of, that I've seen, that I've been told. And that is when you get to know that it was all staged, it was all scripted. Right. It was
absolutely.
exactly, they just put their best foot forward because they were made aware that there's going to be an inspection. Some high
Mm.
level members of some high level organization are going to come and visit. So tidy up, get your act together,
Yeah.
have 1 days, 2 days, how much ever, and just do it. So yeah, that's
And the other deplorable part about this is that even these higher authorities, and I'm not talking about these organizations from the United Nations that come in for inspection every once in a while, are involved into this directly. They certainly turn a blind eye, which is a factor that is difficult to ignore. But
Correct.
again, people that are in the higher level, like if you go in for the ministers and stuff, or even some unions, that some trade unions that are made to protect the rights of workers, they are also involved in this process, and they are equally guilty
Of
because
course.
they are taking some money and compensation out of it. And it's a very well known factor. In fact, like I said, now that these fast fashion brands have now started to transition into the cosmetic industry, which
Right.
is again another $1 billion industry. Like, it is thriving at this point of
Correct.
time. So like fast fashion came into cosmetics. There was a documentary by Refinery 29, which was posted on the internet, and it gained so much of attention that it ended up getting viral. But what was being highlighted, why was it viral, is because it highlighted the mica industry in Jharkhand.
True. True.
And the biggest source of mica is in India. It is in Jharkhand at the moment. But what they did was that they came in undercover. They did not really tell that we are people, we are journalists, trying to investigate. So they did it under the noses of all the authorities, or like all these bureaucrats and authorities. And they managed to make their way to one of those mines, and they saw most, like maybe like 80% of people working there were actually children. So it was not ethically sourced. And the thing is that mica is used in almost every makeup product that gives a sheen.
Correct.
So what is responsible for the sheen is the mica, and you don't even know if it is ethically sourced. So like even consumers at this point think that how much are we able to eliminate?
Right.
But the thing is, you don't have to completely eliminate. What you can do at this stage is you can always minimize,
True.
even for the clothes that you have. And I'm after discovering that there is so much of water wasted, like 2,000 gallons of water behind your pair of denim. So obviously you are suddenly hit with this fact, and you get
Ah,
agitated.
correct.
Yeah. And what you don't need to do now is that you don't need to take that pair of denim and throw it away, or like dispose it. What
Right.
you need to do is that you need to make the maximum utilization
Correct.
of that piece of clothing that you have,
True.
and discourage further purchasing of that particular product.
Of course. Yes. Spread the word.
That's the way.
Spread the word. That's I think the biggest one of the biggest ways that we can contribute. Right.
Absolutely. And see, here's the thing, that you don't need to understand any law or any technicality for that matter. This
Right.
is something that is catered to everybody, because we all are consumers, and we must all be aware of what we are purchasing and what kind of industry are we contributing to.
Absolutely.
So, like, I mean, to my surprise, fast fashion is not given that kind of importance, because the whole underlying motive here, the ulterior motive here, is profit maximization. They are all making profits,
Correct. Correct.
all the way from bureaucrats to authorities to trade unions to organizations to companies, corporate giants, manufacturers. Everybody is making profits.
True.
In turn, there is a huge social and economic and environmental cost that is associated with it. That is what needs to be very effectively highlighted here. And again, another thing with organically grown fabrics, like I said, they are more sustainable, they are more catered towards slow fashion, like organically grown cotton, or like silk, for that matter. Certain fabrics also, like research and development is pushing towards fabrics that are more environmental friendly, but they're also durable at the same time, so that you don't have to dispose it off in a matter of like couple of weeks or like months or even 2-3 years. They
Right.
will last you for a very, very long period of time. And one such fabric that people are not aware of is actually hemp fabric.
Right. Of course. Yes.
And like recently I've been working with a hemp organization which is called the Himalayan Hemp.
Right.
And people can even go check their sites out and see um, that they make fabrics out of hemp. What hemp is basically, it's cannabis that people don't know of.
Right.
And the moment you hear cannabis, you automatically think of all these scandals, NCB,
Right.
Riya Chakravarti,
Right.
and whatnot. So everything just like comes in together, and people, you know, um, they sort of think to themselves, well, cannabis is just a drug, and what it does is it contributes to the addiction problem here in India, or it contributes to the drug trafficking.
Right.
I think what people don't understand is that there are many, many other uses, industrial and commercial, but not recreational,
Correct.
uh, of cannabis. So, and again, it is become a huge impediment for those industries as well to thrive because of central legislations and acts like the NDPS, which does not really have a procedure which is prescribed for licensing. It
Right.
just gives the state government the powers to
Powerful.
make those
Correct.
policies,
Correct.
right? So, like if the state government is permitting the cultivation of hemp, then only and only then they will be able to do so.
Of
And certain states like Himachal Pradesh do so. Uttarakhand is now the hub for cannabis cultivation, for
correct.
that matter. But then
Correct.
again, what happens is that there are loopholes. People use it for recreational purposes because cannabis is a plant that grows in the wild,
Right.
and the THC value in those cannabis plants cannot be controlled.
Correct. Correct.
And there are certain seeds that require a lot of research and development to ascertain what kind of hemp would it produce. Would it be
True.
suitable for fabrics? Would it be suitable for cement? Or would it be suitable for pharmaceuticals or any other industry that it is involved in? The fact here is that it is a $1 trillion industry that people have not yet tapped into, and
Correct.
that's only because of the restrictions that have now been created. Even what the NDPS does is that NDPS is actually a hasty piece of legislation if you really look into it.
Right.
The reason why NDPS was implemented, it was established, is because it faced pressure from the United Nations and a couple of other countries like
The USA,
uh, the
in the
United
yes,
States.
yes,
Yeah. And then they basically said, you are perpetuating the drug problem,
right,
and you are promoting drugs. Otherwise, people used to cultivate opium and they used to cultivate cannabis back in the day without any restriction whatsoever, until NDPS came along. Like everything was then categorized under one category.
fun, absolutely,
Yeah. So it is again inadequate because it does not really highlight what impact it has, what kind of a drug is it even addictive in the first place, and like naturally what is 100 grams of heroin and 100 grams of marijuana makes a lot of difference.
correct,
And there are a set of loopholes that NDPS currently has. It has gone through a set of amendments, but those amendments only make those provisions more and more stringent.
true,
And the other factor to it is that it is very punitive. It is not reformative in any way, shape, or form. You haven't heard much about rehabilitation in India at the moment,
right, right,
because it's practically not even mandatory in the NDPS. NDPS cannot even demarcate between a peddler, a drug trafficker, and a victim.
true. There is no protection to victims. There is none.
Absolutely.
There is none.
So, in this way, industries also get affected.
true,
Now, if somebody wants to get into hemp cultivation only for fabrics, and which, by the way, are very, very sustainable fabrics, they are good for your skin, they are
mm,
non-synthetic.
right,
There are many such products that have, in fact, the Himalayan Hemp Organization I was talking about, they came up with a product called the Conspirator, which is basically an N95 mask.
right,
So the covering that you see for the KN95 masks are usually very synthetic.
right,
It creates a lot of perspiration around your nose and your mouth area.
true,
And what these masks are made of, they have the same filters as the KN95 masks, but the upper and the inner layering that comes in contact with the skin is basically made of hemp.
mm,
And it is a very, very soft fabric.
true,
Again, it's biodegradable to quite an extent. So it is certainly the sort of a fabric that one can alternate
correct,
for any other synthetic fabrics such as polyester, nylon, rayon, and anything else that is now harming the industry. And again, hemp cultivation is creating livelihood for the farmers, the local farmers in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh,
correct, correct.
which is also one of the major driving factors of these particular states to legalize hemp cultivation.
True, true.
Yeah.
And
So,
in fact, now that you mentioned the Himalayan hemp company, you mentioned that they're making these hemp N95 masks. I quickly pulled up a window on my browser to check them out, right? To see whether or not, because now see, if we're talking about something like masks, right, we've already have had a sort of discussion on cost effectiveness, right? So I wanted to
mm,
ascertain how much a mask such as this would set me back by. And it's for 175 bucks. So 175 rupees for an N95 mask isn't too much, right? Because if I go to Amazon right now, if I go to Amazon, a decent enough bunch of N95 masks, a set of five, will cost me around 500 rupees, right? But then again, there's another set of maybe 10, which are going to cost me 1,000 bucks, depending on the brand, depending on the company, the reviews that they have, right? So essentially 175 rupees for one mask, given the fact that it's biodegradable, given the fact that you don't perspire as much, it's better for your skin, it's better for your breathing, right? That is a very cost effective price tag that they've applied to their product. So I feel that's
absolutely.
really, really good. And of course, this was not supposed to be a brand plug. This is this curiosity, right? You mentioned something. Curiosity took me there, and I'm really astonished that it's so cheap, right? Because I I
Yeah,
I've looked up hemp fabrics, I've looked up hemp clothing. It's again not affordable, right? Because it's so sustainable and they do employ people and pay them well, right? So all of that is structured into their cost. But this product, yes, definitely, it's definitely worth a try to see how it is, right? And take it forward. Yeah, so amazing.
yeah. And even, they have something for sustainable. I mean, this is not sustainable fashion, but it's a necessity. They have reusable menstrual pads,
Okay,
sanitary napkins
right,
that are made out of hemp fabrics.
right,
Again, when you look at sanitary napkins, which is a necessity for anybody who menstruates, it it itself contributes to so much of waste being produced on a daily basis.
true,
And even these disposable masks that you have these days, or like these N95 masks that you have, it
correct,
has a certain life, right? Like after a point of time, you know that you're supposed to dispose them, and
correct,
it is filling up landfills too. That's what it is doing. And the thing is, now you cannot highlight something like this in the midst of a crisis, a humanitarian crisis like the pandemic itself.
not just in
Letting people,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt,
letting
not
people
just
know that your masks are actually creating a huge landfill at this point
not,
of time,
not,
and they're
not
all
handful. I came across this news piece from I think around a week ago or something, where the cops raided a factory somewhere in Maharashtra that was inserting all of these used masks in mattresses. So the mattresses were filled with used masks and not cotton or any other synthetic fiber, right? So you don't even know where they're going to the extent. Like, of course, landfill so is still predictable, right? It's it's been there. If you apply your mind or if you look it up, it's predictable that that is the outlet, that is where they're going to go. But there is just so much happening. There's so
Hmm.
much happening that it really flabbergasts you. You don't know. After a point in time, you just need to sit down to process things. Correct. And even right now, what this entire discussion, even about hemp, right? You rightly started off by saying a lot of people are unaware. To them, anything related to cannabis is just taboo, right? Especially now, since the last approximately a year on, it's just been so many different things that are totally going against the other effects of cannabis and other products and their industrial usage, which so many people are unaware of, right? So
Absolutely.
I again, as you mentioned, the piece of legislation is inadequate. It's just one central legislation that has put the onus on the states again. And the states
Hmm.
also, I believe there aren't more than two or three. You mentioned Himachal Pradesh, you mentioned Uttarakhand. I think Uttar Pradesh too, to an extent, has formulated certain rules and certain scopes, right? But apart from that, I don't think there's any other state that's involved even in hemp cultivation or
Yeah,
giving.
I believe Punjab and Haryana also does it to an extent, but not so much again because Punjab and Haryana, like I said, has a huge
Yeah,
addiction problem as
correct,
it is for a lot of substances. The only downfall here is that these industries are very unregulated,
true,
and the government, from the other 10,000 problems that they have, they don't want to now invest money into something like this, because this again, like I said, would involve a lot of regulation and a lot of supervision,
right,
that these drugs are not misused and used for recreational purposes, because here in India, recreational purposes, they are decriminalized, and in no way we are supporting that, of course, but
right,
we are saying that there are other benefits.
true,
And even when you look at the seeds for the hemp, people actually also patent these seeds. They have a process of ascertaining if the seeds are um, good enough, or they have a better quality of producing hemp fabrics in the long I mean in the manufacturing process, or
right,
like they are good for pharmaceuticals, like I said.
right,
So now it came to my knowledge that these seeds are imported from places like China, and what it in turn it discourages people in India to
correct,
have their own seed banks.
right.
They have to rely on countries
Import,
like China. And even in China, cannabis is not legal,
correct, correct. But of
but
course,
they're
yeah,
still managing to export it
right,
to other countries. They're still making money out of it. So here's the thing: even here in Indian banks, what they do is that they patent their seeds. They create these hybrid seeds also, for that matter, that are good for cultivation. They don't have high THC. They don't grow in the wild. They grow under very like regulated conditions. And what happens is, like, once you purchase those seeds, they collect royalties out of it because they're patented.
right,
So now these farmers are ending up paying those royalties, and the seeds are extremely costly once again.
true.
And when they are imported, it has another set of issues,
Yes,
because neither are you contributing to the seed banks based in India, or nor are you paying royalties or any other costs, or for the finished products or the revenue generated to the Indian companies. They
true,
are all going outside India.
of course,
So that's again another issue. So it's basically something that one can think about in
of
the long run. And sustainable fashion is something that one must definitely try to implement, at least.
correct.
Like, the consumption of textiles can be lowered quite an extent,
You can become
and people.
with that respect, with respect to using fabrics that we already have, and even yeah, just spreading the word amongst people you speak to on a regular basis, getting them slightly. getting the conversation ball rolling does play a part somewhere, and to whatever extent. But so yeah, that is
Absolutely.
it. Yes.
Absolutely. It's because there are many brands out there, and some have made their way to India. Like I previously stated, Zara, H&M, and Guess, Gap. These brands have come into India. They're all fast fashion brands.
True.
And even Zara, for that matter, when you call it fast fashion, you usually think of affordable fashion.
True.
And like when you go to a Zara store, it's not at all affordable. It is
True.
again targeted to a certain income group.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, and it's in no way fast fashion. But then the point here is like, why are you spending so much of money? Why are you contributing so much of money to a fast fashion brand? While as you could just go in for something more sustainable if you have that kind of
That kind of
income.
spending power. Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a thing. And again, I said something that really revolutionized textiles was e-commerce.
Hmm.
And after the pandemic happened, e-commerce has gotten a very, very like enormous boost.
Correct.
Today, everything is online. And back in the day, just before India and China rivalry, you used to see brands like Shein or Wish,
Correct.
clothes coming in from Alibaba. These are all China operated sites,
Of course. Yes.
and these were extremely cheap. They would like retail at maybe 200 $300, and they were extremely like fashionable clothes, so people used to go in for something like that. But of course, ignoring the fact that this is fast fashion again. But it came as a surprise to a lot of people, but India actually banned it.
Yeah.
And then instead of banning it for the right reasons, which is that this is fast fashion, you are not supposed to use it because there's a huge labor cost that is involved, people are exploited.
Right.
We went in for like, oh well, there is a rivalry between India and China right now,
Right.
so along with other Chinese apps and other Chinese games and stuff like PUBG, it was also banned. They banned Shein, they banned Wish, they banned all the clothing coming into India.
Correct.
It was because of this reason. But I think the only good thing that it did was it disencouraged fast fashion in
True.
turn.
True. That
So
is
definitely there are many, many aspects to fashion when it comes to it. There is employment, there is labor, there's workforce, there are environmental costs, social costs, there's intellectual property that is involved, because these designers are producing designs that are completely original, in
correct.
order to be protected also under the IP.
Right.
The definition itself tells you that this particular design that you are
Right.
trying to protect must be extremely original,
True.
right? So even if you're trying to come up with something, you might as well find that somebody else has already done it, considering like there's so many people in the world, and there's a possibility that two people might think of the same thing. So
True.
it's again, first of all, very difficult to get rights over like designs and get it protected or get it copyrighted. But at the same time, it's involving a lot of time and a lot of cost, a lot of litigation cost as well.
True.
They aren't like like I said, the Design Act of 2000 is only making a person liable up to 50,000, which is not doing much, which is not doing it all.
Correct.
So I think there is just a lot when it comes to fashion. Basically it's like a never ending topic that one
Course,
can speak of.
even this is not this entire segment up until now isn't even touching the surface, right? There is
Yeah,
still so much more to the surface in itself that can be spoken about and commented over, right? I mean, we've spoken
absolutely.
about brands such as Zara, we've spoken about H&M, we've spoken about Forever 21, but I don't think a lot of people know that Nike, Adidas,
Hmm.
they're in the same boat. Correct. They are in the same
Yeah, they are.
cheap labor.
Although Adidas, when Adidas was called out, I remember they were
Correct.
quick to jump on the boat and say, well, we are actually sustainable fashion. We are cruelty free. And the thing is that these brands are just quick to jump onto the
Exactly.
bandwagon and say that, and do a bit of charity work. We will be
Correct.
donating to like it's
If you have a
CSR.
strong PR game, you can end up managing most things, right? So
Absolutely.
that's what it comes down to ultimately.
Absolutely. And these brands are still doing what other brands are doing. They are manufacturing clothes from developing countries, which are giving you the option of extremely cheap labor, is what they are doing. And it's not just Nike, Adidas, or like Zara, H&M. It's also certain luxury brands. There are high luxury brands
Right.
that still engage into such unethical activities, although they are not fast fashion and their fabrics are not exactly damaging to the environment, but they are um, they are involved in bonded labor,
Correct.
whether it be in a third world country, like a developing country, or
Right.
whether it is in an already developed first world country.
Correct.
The labor still exists
True.
because there are just they are given no alternative. They are so highly manipulated and brainwashed that they know that they have now come to the acceptance that if they are leaving this workplace, their life is practically over. Nobody is going to hire them. They
Of
are not
course.
going to get any other job. They are made to think that they are not skilled enough.
The ILO report said that I think more than two-thirds of the sample size that they spoke to felt that they were not skilled enough to be employed in any other industry. Right? They
Absolutely. And
feel
that's
that.
not the case. That's not
Exactly.
the case because they were not, they are not given any professional training for that matter in order to enter a particular industry.
Correct.
They are not made educated before they can get into this particular industry. They are just taught a certain procedure. Like, this is what you need to do, and you better make it right, or you won't be getting paid, or you won't be getting hired elsewhere, or we will fire you. There has been sexual harassment, there have been verbal abuses. So it is, needless to say, a very mentally and emotionally damaging place to work in, if
Correct.
not physically,
Correct.
right? And these factors are blatantly ignored. And for an organization at the level of ILO to say that there is no child labor involved, you and I both know that this is actually just a facade.
Correct.
Because even when you go to local markets and local stores, you will see that there is a child working below the age of 15, evidently below the
Yeah.
age of 15.
True.
So that labor is certainly involved, and they are very easily, they are getting out of it because nobody questions it anymore.
True. True.
Even when right to education was made a fundamental right, people were still in these industries working as laborers. So it violates rights at many levels,
Right.
fundamental rights, even something like, it violates the concept of natural justice when you like even think about it,
Correct.
if you put
It
things
does.
into
Correct.
perspective.
Correct. It does. It absolutely does. We talk of a lot of solutions. We mention that we have existing laws in place, but ultimately, what you touched upon earlier, everyone's in the know, everyone's aware. Administrators, bureaucrats, politicians, right? Everyone is aware. Union leaders, everyone is getting something or the other out of it to not take corrective action, right? And that
Mhm.
is, in fact, the biggest problem. That the reason why we're still here, the reason why we're still stagnant, have not developed when it comes to quality of life and other things, is because we ourselves aren't getting the nation there, right? We're all busy in doing what's best for us, doing what's best for us in that particular moment, even if we're occupying a position of power. So that is, when you sit down to think about it, it really cast that impression in your head. What are we actually doing? And especially because I know for a fact that this segment is going to be watched by a lot of people who do have a certain amount of privilege, right? To
Absolutely.
experience this pandemic with someone in the family, if not yourself, but at least having 1 to 2 earning members in your family, having access to good food every single day, right? That itself shows it, privilege earlier used to be has a vehicle, has a big house, goes to a private school. But now,
It's a
especially,
luxury.
yeah, it used to be termed a luxury, but now with the pandemic, at the very least, it's opened your eyes. Every single day, you read some of the other report, right? So it makes you realize all of us are in a position of some or the other privilege, right? And the very least that we can do is speak about it. The very least that we can do is have day-to-day conversations about it, right? It doesn't need to be a topic for a segment. It can just end up being a normal topic of conversation between two people. And if it were done
Absolutely.
with that purpose, you could end up uh, with a lot more people who are aware of these things, right? Because not everyone
Absolutely.
is going to want to tune into a segment like this, right? Not everyone wants to learn about fast fashion. They're like, hame kya farak padta hai, right? A lot of people do have that outlook, but when your friend circle or when someone close to you just by random chance initiates this topic, you do listen, right? And I think all of us should do that time to time. There are enough
Yeah.
avenues in our day-to-day life where we can speak of such topics without it being a sermon of any sort. And maybe if all of us did that, then you never know how the
it
next few years
it
pan
could
out to be.
create an impact. In fact, there are, I would not say that we are going 100 steps back each and every day, because people are aware of things like fast fashion these days and sustainable fashion, because these environmental issues are becoming such, it's a global threat at the moment,
True.
at the pace that we are proceeding in. We will not have enough for the generations to come ahead of us.
Absolutely.
So it is becoming a topic of a very serious conversation, and there are in fact NGOs and like certain groups, even there is awareness on social media for this. And even
Correct.
the purpose of this segment, although I could practically sit here and I could tell you about the textile laws in India, because
Hmm.
there are import laws in India as well, in the textile industry, that requires you to maintain a certain quality standard. Otherwise, you are not allowed to retail those clothes. So there are like sections and stuff, but at the end, when you think of it, it turns out to be much more complex than what it actually is. It's
Right.
not a straight road for sure.
Of course.
It's a very complicated process that not a lot of people avail. When you think of people that are actually distressed because of these issues that are affected directly, and pursuing legal action against those corporate giants or those companies is the last thing that even comes to their mind to begin with. They
Absolutely.
would rather do it than to approach a court of law, which is extremely, it is unfortunate to
True.
even think of it that way. And although like I said, there are initiatives coming up, they are helping people, at least um, not have their fundamental humanitarian rights violated almost every single day. And even working with the organizations that basically look into these environmental, the damages and just climate change and everything in general.
Right.
But like you said, you know, the awareness is not to a certain degree where everybody knows about it.
True.
There are still going to be some people who are going to look at this segment and going to come across the term fast fashion for the first time. But that itself is the purpose,
Of
that
course.
you need to make
Absolutely.
people aware of something. And like I said, being an advocate, it gives me the privilege to look into these laws, both on the central and the state level, and even on the territorial level, to see what is right, what is wrong, and how an analysis is made. But I don't think that a non-legal person or a layman would be interested into listening about me blabbering about technical law terms and
Correct.
giving a perfect interpretation in the most legal fashion ever. So the at the end, the goal is to create some sort of a social impact, social awareness towards issues that exist today.
Correct.
And even if there is a legal aid that is available, which I feel like unfortunately there is no such prevalent legal measure that can be taken to completely dispel this problem for the
Right.
moment. But
Correct.
if there is, it becomes a part of this conversation for
True.
sure.
Of
But
course.
at the moment, what people need is awareness. This is the first step. When there is an awareness, there is a voice, and only then there is a change that comes after subsequent efforts and gradual years of persistency and perseverance.
Correct.
It comes to a stage where there is actually a change that is made.
Correct.
I just feel like textile laws and rules and regulations here in India, they are so outdated that they cannot match the pace of even something that is growing rapidly like e-commerce.
Correct.
And
Correct.
if people are not able to find a way to retail or sell their clothes directly or import it to countries directly or dump it in countries directly, they will use the medium of e-commerce. We
True.
don't need to be
Right.
established in India,
Don't.
but we surely do ship here in India.
True.
So it creates a loophole.
True, true, absolutely. I completely agree with that. In fact, that did touch a nerve when you mentioned earlier as well that even in India itself, as a manufacturer or as a retailer, it doesn't take you much to sell online. And an Amazon.in or a Flipkart or XYZ is not going to come and do a quality check of the product that you're exactly selling, right? Even if there
Absolutely.
is a layer of that sort attached, it's not with regards to the environmental damage associated with the product you're selling, right? So the sustainability factor when it comes to being able to sell is very easy. It's very easy to bypass because there is nothing to bypass ultimately. So it's again food for thought with respect to a lot of loopholes that exist and how you know the kind of change that you would want to see amongst all of these things in possibly the years to come. So I think this entire session has been pretty informative. And again, we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg. I believe there are other things that you had in mind as well, which we'd probably take on to the next segment that we have, because this
Definitely.
discussion in itself is so eye-opening that we definitely do want to take it forward. So I think more about the cosmetic industry with testing on animals, right? So I,
Absolutely.
I can't wait to take it forward and then put this out there and take a feeler of what viewers and otherwise are thinking of it. And we never know, probably we can end up doing like a short sort of mini Q&A, dedicate about 5-ish minutes of the next segment to any questions that we might receive on the basis of this one, right? So
Correct. Correct.
let's see what even the viewers have to say about it, and let's engage in more conversations such as these, because at the end of the day they are eye opening and they're giving that.
They are what creates social awareness. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a segment like this. It
True.
does not have to be extremely legal and technical. It can always have
True.
legal aspects, but I feel like everybody should start comprehending and start raising awareness among their friend circle or the people that they know that there is something out there, mm, um, that is creating such a huge impact
True.
while we are sitting in our privileged cocoons, and
Correct.
it's time to step out and do something about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for giving us your time and for taking us through all of these really pertinent issues. And I look forward to having you again on this segment really soon. Thank you so
Thank you.
much,
Thank
Alice.
you so much for having me, and thank you for your wonderful time as well. And we'll definitely have some more sessions coming forward, and maybe have something specific that your viewers might want to see us
Definitely.
talk about. Or maybe, I know that this is a legal platform, so there are a lot of lawyers or law aspirants and law students that are out there watching, and they want us to cover something extremely legal and technical in terms of procedures, licensing, interpretation in general, the judgments. There's a lot. There's a lot to discover. Sorry, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, like I said. So that will certainly happen. So
Of
thank you
course.
so much for, I mean, it was a brilliant session
It was a
and
pleasure,
looking
honestly.
forward to more.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Advocate God.
All right. Thank you.